Welcome to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor, your one-stop shop when it comes to animation news and commentary. I'm Drew's co-host, entertainment writer Jim Hill, and he and I are recording this on Friday, April 24th. So much housekeeping to do, Drew. So much housekeeping. I have to start. Now, when you were working at Disney, Doc McStuffins was a thing, right?
Yeah, it was a thing, but they were pivoting more towards Elena. Elena was a big priority when I was there.
Okay. The reason I bring up Doc McStuffins is just this past weekend, on Saturday, April 18th, that Peabody Award-winning program basically ended its run on Disney Junior.
Oh, God. Jim, don't tell me. Did Doc McStuffins get coronavirus? Is that what happened?
It's interesting you bring that up because evidently they stopped recording episodes back in April of 2018. And you have to think that somebody at Disney right now is like, dang, if we just, if that show were still in production, we could do something. Because just this Saturday on CNN, they're doing a co-production between CNN and Sesame Workshop. They're doing what they're calling the ABCs of COVID-19. What's interesting is it's a 90-minute long thing with their chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and network anchor Erin Hill, no relation, but also Big Bird, Elmo, Grover, and Abby Kadabi. But that's the beauty of working with puppets, that you can throw together this sort of broadcast almost instantaneously, whereas with animation you need so much more lead time. Though, speaking of the Muppets, do you want to share what you just saw come through about Roku?
Yeah, so if you have a Roku device, this past Thursday, the Roku channel was introduced, which I assume is just something you get if you have a Roku. I have not looked into this entirely yet, but there was this report on Animation Magazine that says hundreds of hours of Jim Henson content hits Roku. So that's everything from the Wubulous World of Dr. Seuss Season 1 to the Mother Goose stories to the Animal Show, which was a really important thing that Jim worked on before he died. And more esoteric fun stuff like The Ghosts of Fafner Hall, which I don't know, Jim, if you ever saw that, but it was really cute. It was kind of a musical show.
Music.
Yeah.
That's it exactly. Yeah.
And the designs were very much that like late 80s, early 90s, like Creature Shop look. They look more plastic than sort of felt. But I loved it. I don't know how you felt about it.
Look, I was a big supporter of whatever Henson did, and as soon as we finish recording today, I'm headed over to Roku to check to see. I mean, I have my own favorites. I mean, I want to go down in the pile and see if they have the Muppet Musicians of Bremen or the Frog Prince or that's it. But again, I think some of this stuff, anything that featured the classic Muppet characters probably wound up over at Disney.
Yes, they say it's mostly things from Henson Independent Properties, a third-party distribution label. But did you also see the Elmo talk show trailer?
Yeah, that's HBO Max, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I get almost busier than I am these days. That's just amazing. We were just talking about animation lead time and the fact that it takes so long to turn animation around. Well, technically, yes. I mean, if you think about, though, what South Park has managed to do, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, I mean, I've always been kind of stunned how quickly, if something happens in the news, how it will show up on an episode of South Park, which, by the way, this year is the 24th season. Downside is, for those of us who'd love to see what Cartman has to say about COVID-19, they typically don't start running new episodes till September or thereabouts, right?
Right.
Okay. So,
well, have you ever seen the documentary 6 Days to Air about how they make the shows so quickly?
No.
Oh, you should look it up. I think it's on some of the streaming platforms. It's really fascinating. So if you want to know how down to the wire this stuff is, watch that documentary. It's really, really great.
Killer. Okay. So, all right. So what else we got for news? Well, I mean, obviously we have Scoob, which is now going the premium on demand route. Is that the name now? Premium on demand?
Theater at home is another phrase that's being used on some of the channels. Yeah. Yeah. Scoob is coming home, Jim. You ready for it?
Well, again, I remember how enthusiastic you were about this movie, so I'm definitely going out of my way on May 15th to check this out. Though, did you notice the price point this was introduced at?
Yes.
What is it? Okay, so it's $19.99 to rent it for 48 hours, but if you want to buy in the home, that's another term I'm learning this week. That's $24.99. So I have to say, if Warner Brothers felt comfortable with pricing the rental version of Scoob at $19.99, I guess that answers the question about how people were going to react to Trolls World Tour being rentable for 48 hours for $19.99.
Yeah, I wish that Trolls would have had the $25 option to buy, though. It seems silly, but
But as long as we're talking about Warner Brothers, what do you make of this Lego news? Or I'm sorry, can you explain what just happened?
Yes, the rights to the Lego films went to Universal. So, yeah, I mean, you did a great job in our show notes here breaking down just how much money these movies were losing in the last few movies. I mean, the first one was a huge hit, and then they kind of steadily went down. I mean, the Lego Movie 2, which came out last year, was just a certifiable bomb. If you want to go through these numbers, Jim, just to...
I mean, the problem was, I guess the first one was made for $60 million and made like 458 or 468 million worldwide. And if we jump to the Lego Movie 2, the second part, which was released in February of 2019, that cost half as much. Came in or more than half as much. It came in at $99 million. And this is the worldwide gross. It only made $192 million. It made 2/5 of what the original film did. And, the weird part of it is this isn't really a surprise. MovieWeb broke the story, I want to say back in December, talking about, the contract was up with Warner's and that Lego was looking for a new home. And it looked like it was going to be Universal. And there'd also been, the handwriting on the wall. There were the projects that got canceled, like the Billion Brick Race, which you were mentioning started off with what, Drew Pearce is the director?
Yeah, Drew Pearce was going to direct it. He shared some concept art not that long ago from it, which was really cool. And then it went over to Jorge Gutierrez, who did Book of Life.
The problem is you hear about these things and it's like, it was going to be a send-up of Cannonball Run and Gumball Rally. And it's like, oh, that sounds like it would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was the one I was the most excited about. And the one that had the least traction, it seemed like.
And as we were pre-gaming today's show, you were mentioning that you also heard something else was in the works for Lego at Warner's.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had heard that they were looking at a number of Warner Brothers properties to Legofy, including Lord of the Rings. So to me, that seems like that's what Universal is going to do, especially from that press release. They mentioned Jurassic Park 1 million times. So it feels like they will, in the same way that Warner Brothers sort of exploited its back catalog by having Voldemort and characters like that Universal is going to do that for their movies. So, you look at Fast and Furious and the famous monsters, and there's a deep bench there to turn into Legos.
No, definitely. Though I think you had mentioned, though, that should this go forward at Universal and they start to make the movies, that you're hoping that, the production company that did all of the great work on the Lego movies for Warner stays on board, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to Universal, which has Illumination and DreamWorks. So my question is, will Animal Logic stick around to do the animation? Because it's just that was such a key part to those movies' successes. And the other question I have, because of where their overall deal is will Lord and Miller oversee these new movies as well? So yeah, a lot of questions, Jim. A lot of questions.
From my side of the fence, I hate to say this, but given what's going on over at Disney, depending on how you do your math, you have Walt Disney Animation Studios, you have Pixar Animation Studios, you got Blue Sky, and again, I know you don't believe this movie is ever coming out, but we've got the Bob's Burgers movie, April of 2021, folks, mark the calendar, and that's from 20th Century Animation and Bento Box Entertainment. But, face it, Disney hasn't necessarily been doing the greatest job. I mean this in the kindest possible way, because face it, everything about the industry is broken at this point, whether it's the distribution model or how we do publicity and marketing and that sort of thing. But, Spies in Disguise came out on Blu-ray and DVD back on March 10th.
I had no idea. I had no idea, Jim.
See, this is what I mean. And we do an animation news podcast, and we somehow missed that. Though, to be fair, that was also the week that Disney announced it was closing Disneyland and Walt Disney World, and it was the first sort of tidal wave of the big closures. But honestly, Spies in Disguise hit store shelves that week, and nobody knew. My worry is, given how Disney is struggling to properly promote 3 animation studios, the fact that here's Lego coming through the door, and it's going to have to do the exact same thing with DreamWorks Animation and Illumination Entertainment. It's going to have to fight for the best distribution or the best release dates. And
I agree. Yeah.
So I don't know. I want this to work largely because, I like the Lego movies. They're genuinely charming. In fact, if I honestly had to pick a favorite out of the bunch, I'd probably go with the Lego Batman movie. I think it's just as ambitious as the original Lego movie and Lego Movie 2. I love that crazed take on Batman.
Yeah, it's a great movie. I'm working on the best superhero movies since 2000, and Lego Batman has a place on that list, Jim. So, yes.
That's great to hear. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, folks, we've been talking a little bit about Warner Brothers. When we get back, we're going to talk about perhaps the most famous Warner Brothers animation characters, certain Oscar-winning rabbit.
Rain-X wipers are the #1 wiper blades in America. That means all kinds of drivers choose Rain-X. Big drivers in small cars choose Rain-X. Small drivers in big cars choose Rain-X. Drivers with long hair and short commutes choose Rain-X. Drivers with short hair and long commutes choose Rain-X. Drivers with pets on board, babies on board, and bored babies on board choose Rain-X. Basically, drivers who love a clear view of the road all choose Rain-X wipers, the #1 wiper blades in America.
Adobe Acrobat Studio, so brand new. Show me all the things PDFs can do. Do your work with ease and speed. PDF Spaces is all you need. Do hours of research in an instant with key insights from an AI assistant. Pick a template with a click. Now your prezzo looks super slick. Close that deal? Yeah, you won. Do that, doing that, did that, done. Now you can do that with Acrobat. Now you can do that with the all-new Acrobat. It's time to do your best work with the all-new Adobe Acrobat Studio.
Okay, we're back. Before we get into the Looney Tunes stuff, you wanted me to bring up Little Demon, which just got announced yesterday, right?
Yeah, it sounds really cool. It's for FX. It will all be on Hulu after that because, FX on Hulu, Jim. It's big. It's big.
There you go.
But yeah, I just got a green light from FX, and Dan Harmon, who produces Rick and Morty, is producing it, and this is the log line. 13 years after being impregnated by the devil, played by Danny DeVito, a reluctant mother, played by Aubrey Plaza, and her Antichrist daughter, Lucy DeVito, his real daughter, attempt to live an ordinary life in Delaware, but are constantly thwarted by monstrous forces, including Satan, who yearns for custody of his daughter's soul. Now, that sounds fun, does it not?
Well, look, they kind of had me when they said Danny DeVito. I've always been a big fan of his work as Phil in Disney's Hercules from 1997. And he's sort of the only really good thing in Space Jam from 96. I still can't believe they're doing a sequel.
Did we talk about the Space Jam sequel footage that leaked that had like the mask and the Joker and Voldemort in it?
No.
Yeah. It was apparently at some party that LeBron had, and he showed a sizzle for it, and it had all these crazy characters from the Warner Brothers library.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
And I have not gotten a handle on what the storyline is exactly, but yeah, apparently there will be more than just the Monstars in this one, Jim.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I am intrigued again. I still don't necessarily believe there was so many unanswered questions from Space Jam.
Well, the other thing is that Danny DeVito is the voice of a dog in a new Disney movie called The One and Only Ivan, which I'm not sure where that is on the schedule. That's the one with Angelina Jolie and Sam Rockwell about a circus elephant. He keeps doing voices, Jim, is all I've got to say about Danny DeVito.
Okay. All right. Well, got to check out Little Demon and now Ivan, the one and only Ivan.
The one and only Ivan. And Jim, if you can watch that Space Jam footage and decode what is going on, please let me know.
Good. I'll get right on that. But anyway, okay. So we were talking about the Looney Tunes. And so did you see the trailer for the HBO Max thing this week?
Yeah, it looks great. I'm all in on HBO Max, Jim, especially because so much of their branding is catering to animation fans, between South Park and Adventure Time and now this new Looney Tunes.
If I have one concern about HBO Max, well, actually two. First of all, it's getting to the streaming service party thing fairly late. I mean, don't get me wrong. Peacock Live, the beta version has already launched for some Comcast customers, and the official version, starts in July or thereabouts?
Yeah.
Okay. But my concern is if you look at the price point, and again, we were just talking about how $19.99 for 48 hours of Trolls World Tour or Scoob. But here's the thing. HBO Max's introductory price is $14.99 a month. And think about it. Netflix basic plan goes for $8.99. Disney Plus, if you don't do the whole ESPN thing, and oh boy, that would be a great investment now, Drew, wouldn't it? That's what, $6.99, and Peacock Live, if you go with the commercials version, is $4.99 a month. I mean, I think there's a number of people, and don't get me wrong, you're right, they've got a great, deep animation-based bench, with Adventure Time and South Park and these new Looney Tunes shorts. Especially now in this economy, on the heels of how many people are out of work with the pandemic, this is a tough time to do, and it's only $14.99 a month. It's like,
Yeah. Well, I think what my guess is that if you have HBO as part of your cable package, you're going to get it for free.
Okay.
That's the hunch I've got, Jim. Because already if you have AT&T based cable, you're getting it for free. But I think that nobody is going to want to say, yes, you have to pay $14.99 for this thing, because all you're going to do is just unhook HBO from your cable provider. You know what I mean?
Interesting point.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So to double back to the new Looney Tunes stuff. So June of 2018, that we found out this was in the works. And, and remember at that point, they, the big hook for it was 1,000 minutes of new Looney Tunes, but it was going to be across all sorts of different platforms and headed in all sorts of different directions. And then last June at Annecy, we got to see the first short, Dynamite Dance, which was done to the Dance of the Hours. And, by the way, the theme of the show today, folks, is apologizing. First, we didn't tell you about Spies in Disguise hitting store shelves back on March 10th. And now, when we clearly should have talked about this on the last show, we neglected to mention that on April 7th, they announced that Annecy, this International Animation Festival, is not going to be held this year. It's supposed to June 15th to the 20th. We remember to talk about Comic-Con, but not this.
Listen, Jim, until they invite us, I don't care. Okay? They can be canceled forever until they actually invite us. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, all right. Special note to our fans in France, please. Drew wants an invite. He's being subtle. Okay. All right. So anyway, it's October of last year. We find out that the Looney Tunes shorts are going to be at a featured attraction over at HBO Max. Interesting. They don't say anything about the 1,000 minutes, but we do find out that this Looney Tunes reboot is going to consist of 80 11-minute long episodes featuring marquee Looney Tune characters and gag-driven shorts that include classic storylines adapted for present-day audiences. What's kind of funny is that, again, the internet is the home of, the crank. And so, I looked at the trailer and it's like, this looks great. But if you go around the internet, there are people who are complaining. It's like, oh, Bugs Bunny is using an iPhone, or he's down in his hole and he's got a flat screen television and he's making jokes about streaming services. And it's sort of like, really, you're going to complain about that? Have we forgotten about Loonatics Unleashed?
I'm going to speak for everyone, Jim, and say, yes, we have.
Now, this is 2005 to 2007. Had you started working as entertainment writer back then, or?
No. Well, I started around 2007. So, yeah, no, this was before my time. Thank God.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of a fascinating story. As I understand it, as folks at Warner Brothers Television Animation have explained it to me, they had a success, a big success, in 1999 with Batman Beyond. The whole notion of moving Batman into the future, giving us an elderly Bruce Wayne and, a new young Terry McGinnis, I want to say was the name of the character.
Yep.
I mean, it had a great look. And the thing is, the Batman fans embraced it immediately. And so the thinking was like, wow, okay. We should try to do this with some other characters in the Warner Brothers library. And so eventually they decided to make a run at the Looney Tunes. But here's the thing. Have you actually heard how the show was described back in the day? It was called a post-apocalyptic action comedy adventure that jumps 700 years into the future, introduces us to the superheroic descendants of the Looney Tunes gang. And then when you get into the specific, it's set off in the far-off year of 2772. We're on the city planet Acmetropolis, which gets knocked off of its axis by a meteor strike. But the upside of the meteor strike is it unleashes supernatural energies, which then give certain individuals special abilities and strengths. So among the people who get affected are Ace Bunny, who is a descendant of Bugs Bunny, who's evidently working as a stunt rabbit in movies when he gets transformed. We have Danger Duck, who was a descendant of Daffy, who was employed as a pool boy before he got his superhero abilities. We have Techni Coyote, descendant of Wile E. Coyote, a college student at Acme Institute, and he's the inventor of the group. He makes all of the gadgets and all that. Anyway, again, Drew, I can just sense the enthusiasm pouring off of you here.
Well, yeah, I mean, but what was also weird was like Marvin the Martian would show up and he would just be the same Marvin the Martian.
Well, that actually, I think that's season 2.
Okay.
Because, first of all, the show's supposed to start September 2005. So they release a trailer in June of 2005, heralding the show that's coming to the kids' WB in the fall. And it was, and the world stood up as one and said, "Do not want." It was kind of I mean, certainly the folks at Warner's were startled because they're like, well, wait a minute. Really? You've just seen the trailer. And it's like, no, don't want it. And there were petitions and, lots of negative press. But here's the problem. As happens typically with animated series, that Warner's had ordered 26 episodes, which were going to then be split into 2 13-episode seasons. And basically, the first season worth of shows were done. They were overseas being animated, painted, and they were going to be on their way back and, on the air for the fall of 2005. So there was an opportunity to go in and tweak season 2. So that, as you mentioned, Marvin the Martian shows up. Those shows were deliberate effort. They changed the tone. They tweaked the look. They tried to make them more in the spirit of the original Looney Tunes. But it was all wasted effort. When the show debuted in, again, September of 2005, people watched and, God, it's just as bad as I thought it was going to be. They didn't come back in September of 2006 to check out the fix shows. And in fact, what was kind of interesting, this was also during the period where Warner's, the WB and UPN basically got swallowed by the CW. And so,
right.
so this is during that time where it's just sort of like, there's a lot of, okay, we have to burn through these shows that we inherited as we're getting our brand new network up off the ground. So, yeah, they ran the shows, but by May of 2007, it's just like, okay, we're done. Just these go back into the vault, and, or more to the point, they become guitar picks. In fact, that's the most interesting thing right now. You know, if you talk with anybody about the history of the Looney Tunes characters, they delicately step over or around Looney Tunes Unleashed. It's
right.
You know.
So what did you think of the footage of the new show, though? Or whatever it is, the HBO Max shorts?
Well, again, I honestly liked what I saw. You know,
Okay.
In fact, as far back as Dynamite Dance last year, I loved the fact that they were making an effort to do the 40s style animation. In fact, what's kind of interesting is to watch this trailer starts off with a bit where Bugs is arm wrestling with Yosemite Sam. And at one point, they put a shadow on Yosemite Sam's nose. And it's one of these things where it's like, wow, that sort of detail for a throwaway gag. It's just sort of like, this is really cool. Now, mind you, what's kind of interesting is if you drill down into the production team of this, it's the Uncle Grandpa people who, you know, were doing a lot of work on this.
Okay.
Uncle Grandpa had some wonderful off-the-wall stuff. So it's
I
like,
agree.
It's just so one of these things where it's like, okay, I love the look, and I'm intrigued by it's those folks who are doing this. So let's see, let's give it a shot. But again, you know, I mean, let's be honest here, Drew. You and I both know that what happened with Loonatics Unleashed happens all the time in animation. You get really talented people who want to try to do something unique, something different, and, you know, totally, you know, go into something with entirely good intentions, and it winds up, you know, just blowing up in their face, which brings me to the story that Josh Gad shared last night on Twitter. By the way, did you get a chance to see that yet?
I did. I watched it this morning. Yep.
Well, to explain, folks, Josh has been doing this really great thing, particularly for parents who, you know, have small kids at home and are trying to find new ways to entertain them. And what Josh has been doing is, I want to say every weeknight has been reading a different children's story. And then, you know, after that wraps, he sort of chats to the parents for a few minutes. And last night, what he did is he talked about the early version of Frozen. And back when it wasn't even called Frozen, it was what? Anna and the Snow Queen, right?
Right. Yeah.
And this was, if I'm remembering the story correctly, it was the first table read for the project. And this was back when it wasn't Bobby and Kirsten Anderson Lopez doing the music. It was actually Alan Menken. In fact, as I understand it, a lot of the songs for this version of it were originally written for a stage show for Tokyo Disneyland.
Yes. That is what I've heard as well.
But what's interesting is that this is the first time Josh has really gone on the record and into specifics about who was there with him at the table read. And so what? Instead of Kirsten Bell as Anna, it was Jennifer Goodwin, right? From Zootopia. And Once Upon a Time. We had Jason Biggs in I'm not sure the character was called Hans at this point, but the gentleman who did the American Pie movies. And then for the Snow Queen, it was Megan Mullally from Will and Grace, who, by the way, I guess just ended the revival version the other night. But as it's always been explained to me, Megan was there as a placeholder because the person that Disney really wanted for the Snow Queen was Bette Midler.
That makes sense.
And this was the version of Anna and the Snow Queen. The Snow Queen's the villain, straight up villain of the film. And I think we talked at length on another fine-tuning about how she's really a show queen. You know, in fact, there's that great piece of concept art where she's getting dressed and she throws out her arms and all of these Snow White ermines run at her and bite onto her clothes, and she's suddenly wearing this beautiful fur coat that's made out of live ermine. but again, in this version, Olaf is her henchman, right? And the running gag of this version of the movie was that Olaf, with his carrot nose, his superpower was he could smell people coming from far away, so he could always warn the Snow Queen, like, oh, here comes Anna, So anyway, they do the table read. It doesn't go great. So the project gets tabled, and Josh goes off and does Book of Mormon on Broadway, which raises his profile as a performer, which then leads to him being cast as one of the title characters in DreamWorks animation, Me and My Shadow. And you've seen some of the animation for this out there online, right?
Yeah, this was supposed to be a 2D, 3D hybrid where the characters were 3D and the shadow was 2D. And it's really fascinating. I think the last movement on it was that Edgar Wright was going to take it over. Do you remember that? A few years ago? Yeah. But this thing has been like perpetually in development for decades, it feels like.
Okay. Well, as Josh was talking about this project last night, I've always assumed he was the voice of the shadow, but it turns out, I guess, he was the me. He was the voice of the human who, suddenly has to deal with his shadow becoming independent. Anyway, long story short, he's working on that project and he gets a call from Disney and it's like, hey, Frozen is back on. And not only that, but Bobby and Kristen Anderson Lopez are now, Alan Menken's out. The Lopezes are doing the score for the film, and they have expressly told us that they want you to come back and voice Olaf. But again, Josh has signed a contract with DreamWorks, and then he's playing the title character in this upcoming animated feature. But he really wants to help out his friends, so he contacts Jeffrey Katzenberg, the head of the studio, and explains the situation. And he goes, "Look, Olaf is a really small part." And if you think about it, Olaf really is a small part. He doesn't come into the movie till like halfway through. I mean, I think over time the part grew as Josh was doing voice work for it. But Katzenberg listens to Josh, and he likes Josh. He says, "Okay, all right, I would be willing to entertain this idea that you can voice Olaf and you can still voice one of the title characters in Me and My Shadow." But he sets down conditions, first and foremost, that Disney can't use your name in any of the publicity or the marketing materials for this movie. And it's like, well, I'm a small supporting character. I didn't think that was going to happen anyway. And then Gad would not be allowed to do any interviews in support of this film. And this was supposedly, at least at that moment in time, because Frozen and Me and My Shadow were originally supposed to be out in theaters within like 2 weeks of one another, which makes me think about the Robin Williams thing in 92, where, what was it, Aladdin came out in November, and then in December of 1992, that's when Barry Levinson's Toys arrived in theaters, and that starred Robin Williams. And Robin kind of made that also, understanding like, look, I'll do the genie. I'll do the voice of the genie. But he put restrictions in place to the effect of, you can't use my name to promote the film. And, I think we've talked about this, Drew, about the whole.
But what Josh Gad said, though, that was interesting was that they were going to make a sort of guessing game out of who Olaf was. That was going to be built into the marketing is like, who is it? Which I think is very Disney to me.
Well, okay. But anyway, to get back to Robin Williams, and again, Robin, because Toys tanked when it came out in the theaters, and Aladdin for a time was Disney's highest grossing animated film ever. I mean, this was back in the day when, oh my God, an animated feature's made over $200 million in domestic release. That has never happened before. And these days, it's like, what? You didn't make $1 billion? Pfft, failure. Anyway, so Robin really felt that Jeffrey had let him down or gone back on his word, and he didn't actually come back to work for Disney till after Katzenberg left Disney in, I want to say, what was it, the summer of 94?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. We've always been told that, one of the main reasons that Michael Eisner just basically sort of forced Jeffrey to resign is that Jeffrey was campaigning very, very hard for Frank Wells' job. Because remember, in the spring of 1994, Frank Wells had been killed in that tragic helicopter accident. And Eisner supposedly felt it was unseemly that Katzenberg was chomping at the bit to get Frank's old gig. But another story has come up about this, and another possible explanation as to why Eisner was kind of in the mindset to let Katzenberg go, to sort of kick him out the door at Disney. And supposedly, Michael Eisner was furious with Jeffrey from earlier that year, earlier in 1994, because Katzenberg was going to open a deep-sea themed restaurant in partnership with Steven Spielberg called Dive. And the interesting thing is that Katzenberg had reportedly cleared the venture in advance with Frank Wells, who had no objection to it. But the interesting thing is that Eisner felt it was a blatant conflict with Disney because they, in turn, were trying to get their own themed restaurants up and running. This would have been, what, Mickey's Kitchen, Drew?
Yes. Yeah, which we will go into detail on another episode about. But yeah, I never got to go, but I was fascinated with the concept. But yeah, I mean, this was the themed restaurant boom time, I would say, right?
Oh, God, yeah. Well, and that's the interesting thing is it was the success of Planet Hollywood and the Hard Rock that made Spielberg and Katzenberg, it's like we should be in that business. We should get in that space. And the thing I think that made Eisner crazy was that, Katzenberg, was actually able to get Dive going with Spielberg. They had one in, Century City in Los Angeles, and they had one in Las Vegas, and they built one in Barcelona. And meanwhile, Disney, I think, did 2 prototype versions of Mickey's Kitchen and eventually walked away from it. There's a number of issues there. And as Eisner expressed it, in fact, this is a quote from James Stewart, the author of Disney War. It's like, my greatest concern about Jeffrey is it has to do with the way he conducts himself and to the degree he focuses on his own agenda. Anyway, another reason Drew and I are sharing this story today is we now want to talk about our new project, Sorry You Missed It, and which really comes out of one day Drew was telling me about. You went to the Dive in Las Vegas, right?
I did, yes, on the same trip that I went to MGM Adventures and experienced all 3 themed parts of the Luxor experience as well.
Yeah, and see, this is the thing, folks. There are so many of these sorts of ambitious attractions, whether they're themed restaurants or, for example, aren't you also doing some research right now on the Star Trek experience for Vegas?
I am, yes. I'm doing that for StarTrek.com. And it's wild. Yeah, there was so much stuff going on then.
And again, Drew and I have a genuine love of not only the world of themed entertainment, but the stuff that crashes and burns and why it crashes and burns. So what we're developing with Sorry You Missed It is a show that will take you to these places. We'll give you, the history of their development. And then, we'll do things like, again, Drew actually ate at the Las Vegas Dive. And was it as loud as they say it was? Or,
it was insanely loud. It was crazy loud. Yeah.
Because what? The gimmick of the restaurant was every 45 minutes, it would pretend to submerge and travel to some new spot, right?
Yes. And there were accompanying graphics and, it was a lot, Jim. It was a lot. I don't know how you would work there. Let's just put it that way.
No, see, that's the thing. The klaxon horns would sound and the lights would flash, and it's made entirely out of metal, so everything echoes, and it's just sort of like, oh my God, why would you go back? But yeah, we're going to talk about that. We're going to, like you mentioned, we're going to talk about MGM Adventure. For Disney fans, we're going to do things like talk about Pleasure Island, and not just the Pleasure Island at Walt Disney World at Lake Buena Vista, but also the Pleasure Island that was built right outside of Boston, where C.V. Wood, the master builder of Disneyland, literally walked out the door with his Rolodex full of former Disney employees and took them along with him to build Disneylands all over the country. But anyway, look for this shortly, folks. Drew and I will most likely begin working on episode 1 of this series this weekend. I have to warn you, though, that because of the amount of heavy-duty research involved with this one, we're looking to go the Patreon route with this, and we're hoping that you folks can be supportive of it. But yeah, we should have episode 1 up and running shortly, and then after that, we're looking at doing stories about Heritage USA. What is it?
We gotta do Mars 2021 or whatever that was.
God, Nancy and I went to dinner there once, and I still wake up screaming. But we'll talk about that later. So speaking of waking up screaming, Drew, given that the news we just got about the Mission Impossible movies now being pushed back by 6 months, you're okay, right?
I'm okay, Jim. I'm dealing with it. I'm shocked it's only 6 months. It should really be a year.
Okay.
So yeah, but they're coming, and we're gonna get them at Thanksgiving. So I think that's a good time for Mission Impossible.
Okay. So what's going on with the Light the Fuse podcast, other than those really handsome T-shirts?
You thinking about getting one? Yeah, you should get one.
I'm very tempted.
Yeah, you can get our T-shirts on TeePublic. Yeah, we've just got a bunch of great guests today. We are talking to Michael Kaplan, who is the amazing costume designer for Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. I mean, this guy has done every single cool movie from Clue to Blade Runner. Never been nominated for an Oscar. But is one of the coolest guys. So definitely check it out.
Okay. And speaking of things we hope you can check out, we have the Disney Dish podcast that I do with Len Testa. We have the Looking at Lucasfilm podcast I do with Dan Z. Drew, you'd love this. The Van Eaton Gallery is doing another one of their Disneyland pop culture auctions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and what's kind of interesting is they have early publicity material for the first Star Wars movie, and it's really fascinating because it's like you are literally explaining to the world who Obi-Wan Kenobi is, and things like these things, these Ewoks. It's a little teddy bear people who live in the redwoods, and they have some absolutely amazing stuff. They're selling off, for example, a chunk of the Death Star, a piece of the model that was used to actually shoot the original film from 1977. But yeah, Dan and I will be talking about that. We also have the marvelous Disney podcast I do with Aaron Adams, the gentleman who edits a lot of the podcasts here. We have Universal Joint with Dustin Fuse, and of course, I Want That with Michelle Valladolid. Anyway, folks, if you could do Drew and I a favor and head over to iTunes and rate and recommend not only this podcast, Fine Tuning, but also Light the Fuse. That would be very helpful. Also, if you want to subscribe over at Bandcamp, also helpful. And just final housekeeping, Drew. Folks, if they're looking for you on social media, where can they find you?
Drew Tailored, Talored, and Light the Fuse is on all the platforms as well. So, yeah, I'm out there, Jim.
All right. Well, again, I always enjoy your Twitter feed. In fact, that's where I actually learned about the Lego deal. And again, you were nice enough to mention that they hope they keep Animal Logic on board to continue the animation. But anyway, similarly, we're on Twitter and Instagram as Jim Hill Media and over on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. Anyway, folks, that's it for today. But Drew and I will be back with a brand new show where hopefully it won't take us 6 weeks to mention that, Spies in Disguise is available on Blu-ray and DVD.
I got to order it right now, Jim.
There we go. Headed there right now.